The storm clawed the windows as she ran, barefoot, through the abandoned chapel, her nightgown soaked and clinging to her trembling body. In the moonlight, she saw him tall, cloaked in crimson, his face hidden but his voice smooth as velvet and knives. "You begged the heavens for a savior," he whispered, "and they sent me." His hand brushed her throat, not a touch of comfort, but a promise of possession. She should have fled. Instead, her heart betrayed her, beating in wicked, frantic anticipation. Somewhere in the dark, the bells tolled midnight, and the dead began to stir. The rain had begun at midnight. Savannah's streets gleamed black and slick under a churning sky, and the Spanish moss hanging from the ancient oaks dripped like the hair of drowned men. Isabel Hartwell clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she crossed through the overgrown cemetery, her boots slipping in the mud. She didn't know why she was drawn here, only that something inside her pulsed with a strange, restless hunger tonight. The wind whispered her name. Isabel. At the heart of the graveyard stood the old cathedral, a place even the homeless and desperate dared not enter. The city had long abandoned it, letting ivy strangle the stone angels and rain collapse the roof. But the building had one thing untouched by time: the crimson door. It shone like wet blood in the moonlight. Shivering, Isabel stared at it. Every instinct screamed to run, to pray, but another voice, low, slow, almost sensual, slid into her mind like smoke under a door. "Come in, little lamb." Her trembling hand rose of its own will. The iron handle was ice against her skin. She swallowed. Lightning flashed, throwing her reflection across the door's varnished surface. Pale skin, soaked hair, wide blue eyes brimming with fear, and something darker. Anticipation. The door swung inward without a sound. Inside was velvet darkness, warm and suffocating. As she stepped over the threshold, the heavy door slammed shut behind her with a finality that made her heart stumble. The chapel smelled of wet stone and old blood. Long pews rotted in rows like broken teeth. High above, shards of stained glass windows clung to the bones of the vault, bleeding faint colors onto the ruined altar. And standing before it was a man. He was tall, wrapped in a cloak, the color of deep wine. His face remained hidden beneath a hood, but she felt the weight of his gaze, the way a deer feels, the wolf's. Isabel took a step back. The man took a step forward. "I have waited for you," he murmured. His voice so rich and smooth, it seemed to wrap around her body like a lover's hands. So many lifetimes, so many prayers unanswered. And now, he reached for her. His fingers, long and elegant, brushed her jaw, not forceful, but reverent, almost worshipful. Isabel's skin ignited at the contact, and a gasp escaped her lips before she could stop it. "You are mine, Isabel Hartwell." The storm raged outside, but within these crumbling walls, a different storm was rising, hot, breathless, and ancient as sin. Isabel tried to speak, but her mouth was dry, her heart hammering so hard she thought it would shatter her ribs. She stepped back again, bumping into the cold stone wall. "I don't know you," she managed to whisper. Her voice sounded small, lost in the vastness of the ruined cathedral. The man's head tilted, as if studying her with both amusement and pity. "But I know you," he said softly, almost sadly. "I have known your soul since before your bones were born. You are the last who can break the chain." His words, heavy with something like longing, shivered along her nerves. She shook her head. "I don't understand." He stepped closer, not touching her this time, but close enough that she could feel the strange heat radiating from his body, as if he burned hotter than any living thing should. "You will," he murmured. From beneath his cloak, he produced a black rose, its petals glistening with rainwater. He pressed it into her hand. The thorns pricked her skin, and a single drop of her blood fell onto the stone floor between them. Instantly, the entire cathedral breathed. The rotted wood of the pews groaned. The broken statues shifted in their niches. The air grew thick, humming with ancient hunger. The man's hand tightened around hers, binding her to him with frightening tenderness. "You have opened the door between worlds, my sweet lamb," he said, his voice deepening into something both beautiful and terrible. "You have called me forth. You have made a promise." "No," she whispered. "I didn't promise anything." He smiled, then slow, devastating. "You knocked," he said simply, and the door was answered. At that, the crimson door behind her groaned again, and Isabel dared to glance over her shoulder. Through the narrowing gap, she saw not the rainy cemetery she had left, but endless corridors of red velvet, dripping candles, mirrors that reflected nothing, and figures that moved, hunched, and whispering. In the dark, fear slammed into her so hard she stumbled. When she turned back to the man, he was suddenly closer, so close she could see the sharp line of his jaw beneath the hood, and the shadow of his mouth, curving into a smirk both seductive and cruel. "Tell me your true name, Isabel Hartwell," he whispered against her ear, his breath impossibly warm. "Speak it, and be mine forever." A part of her, the part that still believed in Sunday prayers and summer roses, screamed to run. But a darker part, deeper and older, pulsed with desire. A part that yearned for something wild, something forbidden, something she could not name. Lightning shattered the sky outside. The candles along the walls flared to life, and in their light, Isabel saw it at last, branded across the man's hand. A sigil, a serpent devouring its own tail, crowned with a burning heart. She gasped and tore herself away from him. "What are you?" she cried, backing toward the altar. The hood slipped back, and for a moment, her heart truly did stop. He was beautiful. Inhumanly beautiful. Skin like pale marble kissed by shadows. Eyes so dark they seemed bottomless. Lips that promised pleasure and ruin in equal measure. "I am your salvation," he said, "or your damnation." And as the storm crashed against the broken stained glass, Isabel realized the choice might already be out of her hands. Isabel awoke with a start, her breath catching in her throat. The room was bathed in the silvery glow of the moon, which filtered through the lace curtains, casting intricate patterns on the wooden floor. The familiar surroundings of her bedroom offered little comfort. The events of the previous night clung to her like a second skin. She sat up, the sheets pooling around her waist, and reached for the rose she had placed on her nightstand. But it was gone. In its place lay a single red feather, its hue so vivid it seemed to pulse with life. A soft rustling drew her attention to the window. Standing just beyond the glass was the woman in red silk, her face obscured by a delicate mask. her presence as ethereal as the mist that swirled around her feet. She raised a gloved hand and pressed it against the pane, leaving behind a crimson imprint that slowly faded. Isabel's heart pounded as she approached the window, but when she flung it open, the woman had vanished, leaving only the lingering scent of roses and something more primal desire mingled with decay. The days that followed were a blur. Isabel found herself drawn to the cathedral, unable to resist its pull. Each visit unveiled more of its secrets, whispers that echoed through the halls, shadows that danced just beyond her vision, and the ever-present feeling of being watched. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she stood before the crimson door once more. It beckoned her, promising answers, passion, and perhaps damnation. With trembling fingers, she reached for the handle, the cold metal sending a shiver down her spine. As the door creaked open, a familiar voice enveloped her. "Welcome back, my sweet lamb." The door closed behind her without a sound. Inside, the cathedral was different. Gone were the crumbling pews and shattered glass. Now the walls pulsed with a living warmth, the stone veined with gold, the ceilings soaring endlessly above her into a darkness stitched with faint stars. The stranger Damien stood at the altar, his crimson cloak shedding rivulets of shadow onto the glowing floor. "You came," he said, his voice low and filled with something almost like wonder. "I wasn't certain you would." Isabel took a step forward, though every instinct in her screamed fool. "I didn't mean to," she said. Damien's smile was soft, sad. "No one ever means to," he murmured. "And yet, here we are." The rose he had given her had returned to his hand, fresh and full, its scent thick and dizzying. As he walked toward her, the air grew heavier, not with heat, but with expectation, like the breathless hush before a lover's kiss. He stopped only inches away. Isabel craned her neck to look up at him. His face was shadowed, yet every line, the cruel tilt of his mouth, the impossible beauty of his eyes, seemed seared into her mind. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Damien reached out, his fingers brushing a damp curl from her forehead. The touch was barely there, yet it burned. "I want nothing you do not wish to give," he said. "I am bound by your will, not my own." A lie. She felt it in her bones. Still, she could not move away. "You opened the door," Damien continued, twining a lock of her hair between his fingers. "And in doing so, you awakened something inside yourself." "I didn't mean to," she repeated, but her voice wavered. He smiled again. "Indulgent. Dangerous." Meaning is irrelevant. Desire shapes reality here. The shadows around them deepened. From the corners of her vision, Isabel saw them half-formed figures, lovers locked in endless embraces, mouths fused in desperate kisses, hands clawing at each other with a frenzy born of pleasure and pain. Their faces were blurred, their bodies translucent, ghosts of passion, prisoners of it. "Is this what you want from me?" she demanded, anger flashing up to shield her fear. "To make me one of them?" Damien laughed, a deep, rich sound that wrapped around her like velvet chains. "No, little lamb, not them, not yet." He extended a hand toward her, not demanding, not forcing, but offering. "Come, let me show you what lies beyond the mirror." Something inside her, a trembling, secret hunger, almost said yes. Almost. Instead, she clenched her fists and forced herself back a step. "Not until I know the truth," she said. Damien's eyes gleamed, approving. "Good," he said. "You are a fool, after all." He turned away, his cloak swirling around him like a living thing, and began to walk deeper into the cathedral. "Follow me, Isabel Hartwell," he called over his shoulder. "You came seeking answers. Tonight you shall have them. But understand." He paused, and when he turned back, the mask he wore, the beautiful, sorrowful, seductive face cracked just for a moment. What peered through was hunger, ancient, endless, merciless. Not all truths are merciful. And the crimson door behind her faded away, leaving her no choice but to follow him into the dark. The cathedral's nave melted into mist behind them as Damien led Isabel down a spiraling stone staircase, so narrow she had to brush the walls with her fingertips. The stones were slick, pulsing faintly with warmth, as though they were not made of dead rock but living flesh. Every step felt heavier. Every breath tasted sweeter and more poisonous. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground garden, or what had once been a garden. The air was thick with the smell of iron and wild roses. Thorny vines crept across the cracked marble floor, twisting up broken statues and strangling shattered columns. Roses of impossible colors, black, blood red, silver, and deep violet bloomed in tangled profusion, and everywhere, bodies hung entangled in the vines. Some were skeletal. Some were fresh, their skin gleaming under the sickly light of the mirror moon that hung overhead. All of them wore expressions of ecstasy and despair. Isabel recoiled instinctively. Damien caught her wrist in his hand. Not harshly, almost tenderly. "Do not pity them," he said. "They chose this." "Chose?" she whispered, horrified. He nodded. Each of them longed for something forbidden. Power, beauty, revenge, love. He brushed a black rose as he passed. The petals quivered, releasing a faint, pained sigh. When they could not have what they wanted in the waking world, they turned here to the Garden of Thorns. They made their bargains. He turned to her, his eyes gleaming with an unholy light. "Just as you will." Isabel's heart stuttered. "I didn't agree to anything." "Not yet," he said, smiling. "But your heart already leans toward the gate." He lifted her hand, the one still stained by the prick of the black rose, and pressed it against his chest. Beneath the soft fabric of his shirt, she felt his heart beating. Slow, measured, utterly inhuman. "Feel it," he whispered against her ear. "I am bound by the same curse. I too once stood where you stand." His voice roughened with emotion, raw and bitter. "I too wanted something so badly that I bled my soul for it." For a heartbeat, Isabel saw it. A flash of him, as he must have been once young, desperate, broken. Then it was gone, buried under centuries of sin and survival. Damien stepped back, releasing her. "The garden waits," he said. "It will test you. It will offer you everything you crave. It will beg for your surrender." He smiled, but there was sadness in it, too. "If you yield, you will belong to the garden, to me, forever." The thorns at her feet seemed to shift, reaching for her bare ankles like eager hands. Isabel swallowed hard. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Damien's smile faded. "Then it will tear you apart piece by piece and scatter what remains to the winds." The mirror moon above them flared, bathing the garden in silver fire. And the first trial began. The ground split open beneath Isabel's feet. One moment, she stood on cracked marble. The next, she stumbled forward into a place unlike any she had ever known, and yet terribly, intimately familiar. A carnival stretched before her, shimmering under the mirror moon. Bright tints of silk rippled in a warm, perfumed wind. Laughter high, sweet, and a little too sharp floated through the air. Music twisted from unseen instruments, a lilting waltz that made her bones ache to dance. But the faces of the revelers were wrong. They spun and skipped and flirted through the midway, their masks grinning wide. Yet behind the bright paint, their eyes were hollow, gaping black pits that drank in all the light. A man in a top hat tipped it to her with a skeletal grin. A woman in a crimson ball gown extended a hand that was nothing but delicate, polished bone. "Come play, Isabel," the voices whispered as she stumbled through the crowd. She should have run. Instead, she was swept into the dance. Someone seized her hand, a man tall and familiar, his hair golden in the moonlight, his smile the exact same crooked one her brother Daniel used to wear before the fever took him. "Dance with me, Bella," he said, using the nickname only Daniel had ever called her. Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to believe. She ached to believe. But when he pulled her close, she felt no warmth. His skin was waxy and cold, like a doll left too long in the rain. She pulled away with a strangled cry, but the carnival would not let her go. Now a new figure emerged from the mist. A man with Damien's body, Damien's mouth, Damien's scent, but with a different face. Soft, sweet, human. His eyes glowed with promise, and his hand extended in a lover's entreaty. "Stay with me, Isabel," he whispered. "You will never be alone again. You will be loved, cherished, worshipped." He fell to one knee before her, pressing his forehead to the back of her hand. The crowd of hollowed revelers clapped and cheered, their grins stretching impossibly wide. Isabel trembled. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? Love without loneliness. Passion without pain. Here, she would never be abandoned. Here, she would never grieve. "Say yes," the Damien thing whispered, lifting his face so handsome, so tender to hers. His lips brushed her palm in a kiss that seared through every broken, lonely place inside her. Say yes, and end the sorrow. Her heart twisted painfully. Is it so wrong to want to be loved? Is it so wrong to want it so much that you would give anything? Her knees buckled. The world spun. She heard the carnival rise into a frantic, fevered pitch. "Yes," she gasped. The moment the word left her mouth, the mask slipped. The man before her, the not Damien, the not Daniel, the not lover, howled, his mouth splitting into a snarl filled with endless teeth. His eyes boiled into pits of black fire. The crowd screamed in joy, a sound more monstrous than any nightmare. Vines erupted from the ground, snaring her wrists and ankles, dragging her down into the roots of the garden. Pain lanced through her, white hot. But before she could be swallowed, whole strong hands seized her, tearing her free from the thorns. Damien, the real Damien. His face was dark with fury as he ripped the vines apart with bare hands, blood pouring down his arms. He lifted her against his chest, cradling her like something precious and fragile. "You are mine," he growled, his voice not human at all. "No one else will take you." Above them, the mirror moon shattered into 1,000 burning shards. and the carnival of sins collapsed into ash. Isabel woke in a bed of thorns. But when she lifted her head, she realized they did not cut her skin. They curved lovingly around her body, cradling her, holding her in a nest woven of shadows and roses. Damien sat beside her. His crimson cloak was gone. He wore only black, simple, severe, almost priestly, but it could not hide what he was. Not anymore. The veins under his skin pulsed with silver fire. His eyes, once merely dark, now blazed with something vast and ancient. Hunger, longing, a sorrow so deep it could drown the stars. "You're safe," he said, his voice rough, barely human. "You saved me," she whispered, reaching out before she could think better of it. Her fingertips brushed his jaw. Damien closed his eyes, shuddering as if the small touch cost him greatly. "You almost belong to the garden," he murmured. "One word more, and it would have taken you." Isabel swallowed hard. "Why did you save me?" He opened his eyes, and the answer was written there, clear and terrible. Because he loved her, already, hopelessly. "Because I cannot bear to see you caged," he said, "not even by me." He leaned closer, and Isabel did not move away. "But it comes with a price," he said, almost brokenly. "Nothing in this place is free." His hand cupped her face, trembling slightly. "I cannot undo the bond," you began. "You are bound to me now, Isabel Hartwell. Blood to blood, soul to soul." She could barely breathe. "What does that mean?" Damien's thumb traced her lower lip, reverent. "It means," he said slowly, "that to live, you must take part of me into yourself." Her body flushed fear, desire, dread, all at once. "How?" she whispered. His smile was sorrowful and unbearably tender. "You must drink," he said. "Not of wine, not of water, but of me." And then so slowly, she thought she might scream, he pulled aside the black fabric at his throat. There, over his heart, his skin was pale and flawless, save for a single pulsing vein, silver and bright as moonlight. "Just once," he said, "a single kiss, and you will never be alone again." Isabel hesitated. Every story she had ever heard of demons, of monsters, of dark lovers screamed that this was the point of no return. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no malice there, only yearning. Only the terrible hope of a man who had waited too long, lost too much. Could love be evil, even if it was born of darkness? Her hands moved before her mind could catch up. She leaned forward. She pressed her mouth to the place where his heart beat, and she drank. It was not blood that filled her mouth. It was light, liquid fire, moonlight made flesh. It poured into her, burning away the last pieces of her old life, fear, shame, loneliness, until only a bright, terrible clarity remained. When she pulled back, gasping, Damien's arms were around her, and for the first time, she felt it, the bond, snapping tight between them. His pleasure flooded her senses, hot and dizzying. His pain licked at her throat like a lover's kiss. She knew him now, his name, his past, his sins. She knew herself, too, that she could never go back. She was no longer just Isabel Hartwell. She was something other. Damien's lips brushed hers, tentative at first. then deepening, as if tasting the new soul he had awakened. "You are mine now," he whispered against her mouth. Isabel shivered, not from fear, but from the sheer force of it. And when she kissed him back, the garden shuddered and bloomed anew, thorns and roses twisting into the stars. The garden had changed. Where once it had whispered temptation, now it hummed with a fierce, frantic joy. Thorned vines wove themselves into arches, dripping blood-red petals. The marble floor gleamed as if newly polished, reflecting the mirror moon's cold light. And at the center of it all stood Damien. He was dressed in black and crimson, robes embroidered with symbols that seemed to slither and shift when Isabel looked at them too long. His eyes gleamed with a feverish, dangerous devotion. Isabel's feet carried her forward, almost without her willing them. She wore no wedding gown, only her nightdress, torn and stained with her own blood, and as yet the vines lifted to weave themselves into a veil of black roses around her hair. As she reached Damien, he knelt before her, pressing his forehead to the back of her hand. "By thorn and blood," he said, voice trembling. "By soul and sin, by the first kiss and the final breath, I bind myself to you." The garden answered in a chorus of rustling leaves and ghostly sighs. Isabel's heart thudded painfully. She should say no. She should run. She should tear the bond apart before it rooted too deep. But when she looked into Damien's face, the agony, the hope she knew she couldn't. Not because he commanded her, not because the garden demanded it, but because somewhere, in the cracked, bleeding cathedral of her heart, she wanted him. "And I bind myself to you," she whispered, sealing the words in a breathless vow. The garden screamed. Roses burst into frantic bloom all around them, thorns splitting open the earth. The mirror moon shivered, and a crack zigzagged across its face like a bleeding wound. Damien rose to his feet, his hand warm and steady as he took hers. "You are mine," he said softly, "and I am yours. Before all the stars fall, before all the worlds burn." He bent to kiss her, slow and reverent, and when their mouths met, a pulse of power rolled outward, knocking the closest statues into dust. The garden howled its approval. For the first time since she opened the crimson door, Isabel felt no fear, only belonging, only fire. But even as they clung to each other, a new sound rose from the shadows, a deep, hollow tolling, like a funeral bell struck underwater. Damien stiffened instantly, pulling her closer. "No," he breathed. "Not yet. It's too soon." "What is it?" she gasped. The mist at the edges of the garden boiled and writhed. Figures emerged, cloaked, faceless, their bodies draped in rags and chains. Each carried a lantern burning with a sickly green light. Their silent procession advanced across the ruined marble, the chains dragging behind them with a noise like knives on stone. "The keepers," Damien said, voice grim. "They come to claim what they believe is theirs." Isabel's blood ran cold. The first keeper raised its lantern, and the beam of light stabbed through her like a blade. She staggered. Her soul screamed. "They will not take you," Damien snarled, stepping in front of her, shielding her with his body. His voice cracked the air like a whip. "She is mine!" The keepers did not answer. They only raised their chains, black and dripping, and began to circle. The garden, once their sanctuary, had become a battlefield. Isabel clutched Damien's hand tightly as the mirror moon cracked wider and somewhere deep beneath the earth, something far older, far darker stirred in its prison. The keepers tightened their circle. Chains slithered across the marble floor, drawing closer with each heartbeat. Their lanterns bled sickly green light, burning away the edges of the garden's roses and thorns. Isabel clung to Damien's arm. "Fight them," she gasped. "You have power here." Damien's jaw tightened, but his shoulders sagged slightly, as if crushed by a terrible weight. "They are not bound by my will," he said. "They serve the master of the garden, the one who cursed me." The ground trembled, hairline cracks splitting beneath their feet. From deep below, a groan rumbled, the sound of something ancient, waking, stretching. The first keeper lashed out. Its chain whipped toward Isabel with a shriek. Damien lunged, catching it with his bare hand. The metal hissed, burning into his flesh. But he wrenched it from the creature's grasp and hurled it aside. Blood streamed from his palm. "Run," he barked. "Find the heart of the garden. Destroy it." "I'm not leaving you," she cried, wild and furious. A second keeper struck. This time, Isabel ducked, but the lantern's light brushed her skin, and she screamed as it seared through her very soul. Visions flooded her mind. Her mother, calling her a fool. Her father, turning away in disappointment. Damien, laughing cruelly as he pushed her into the thorns. Lies, she told herself. Illusions. Still, the pain was real enough to bring her to her knees. "They feed on doubt," Damien roared, slamming his fist into a keeper's chest and sending it reeling. "They twist your fears! Hold on to me, Isabel! Hold on to the truth!" Through the storm of agony and confusion, Isabel forced herself to focus on one thing. Damien's touch. Warm, steady, real. Not the monster the keepers showed her. Not the nightmare her fears tried to create. The man who had chosen her. The man she had chosen. Summoning every ounce of strength, she rose. "Tell me what to do," she shouted. Damien's eyes locked with hers across the chaos. "Find the altar," he gasped. "The true altar, beneath the garden. Shatter the master's chain. It's the only way." Another keeper lunged, wrapping a chain around Damien's throat, dragging him to his knees. "Go!" he roared, his voice strangled. Tears blurred Isabel's vision. But she ran sprinting through the shattered remains of the garden, dodging thorns that lashed like whips and statues that crumbled under unseen blows. She ran until the ground split open beneath her. Isabel tumbled down into darkness. She landed hard on stone bruised, bleeding but alive. Before her, lit only by the faint flicker of the dying mirror moon above, stood a grotesque altar. It was built of bones, thousands of them fused together with black iron and glistening blood. And wrapped around it like a serpent was a massive chain, its links pulsing with sick red light. At the center of the altar sat a heart. Not a metaphorical heart, a real one. It beat slowly, thickly, sickeningly, pumping black ichor into the veins of the garden above. And Isabel understood. This was the master. This was the prison. This was the curse. And it knew she was there. The heart convulsed, sending out a pulse of raw malice. Voices whispered in the shadows. "Give up. It's too late. He will betray you. You are nothing but a pawn." Isabel staggered under the assault. Every wound, every fear, every whispered cruelty she had ever endured was dredged up and thrown at her, screaming into her mind. But she saw Damien's face, not the cruel illusion, but the truth, and she remembered the way he had bled for her, the way he had saved her when he could have ruled her. Love. Real, broken, defiant love. "You don't own me," she hissed through her teeth. She tore a jagged shard of marble from the floor and raised it high above her head. The heart before her shuddered, its beat becoming frantic. "I choose my own damnation," she cried, and she drove the shard deep into the heart. The garden shrieked. The thorns ignited in black fire. The mirror moon shattered completely, raining shards of burning glass. The chains around Damien's throat dissolved into smoke. The keepers shrieked and fled into the mist. And the altar, the monstrous, bleeding altar, crumbled into dust. Isabel collapsed to her knees, her body broken, her soul raw. But she was free. They were both free. The garden was dying. Isabel knelt among the burning thorns, the ash swirling around her like black snow. Above, the mirror moon had fallen, its shattered remains gleaming across a night sky that no longer wept. It was done. The master's heart had been destroyed, the curse broken, the prison unmade. Yet when she looked up, she saw Damien standing at the edge of the ruins, and something inside her shattered anew. He was fading, not bleeding, not dying, fading, as if tea, screaming into her mind. But she saw Damien's face, not the cruel illusion, but the truth, and she remembered the way he had bled for her, the way he had saved her when he could have ruled her. Love. Real, broken, defiant love. "You don't own me," she hissed through her teeth. She tore a jagged shard of marble from the floor and raised it high above her head. The heart before her shuddered, its beat becoming frantic. "I choose my own damnation," she cried. And she drove the shard deep into the heart. The garden shrieked. The thorns ignited in black fire. The mirror moon shattered completely, raining shards of burning glass. The chains around Damien's throat dissolved into smoke. The keepers shrieked and fled into the mist. And the altar, the monstrous bleeding altar, crumbled into dust. Isabel collapsed to her knees, her body broken, her soul raw. But she was free. They were both free. The garden was dying. Isabel knelt among the burning thorns, the ash swirling around her like black snow. Above, the mirror moon had fallen, its shattered remains gleaming across a night sky that no longer wept. It was done. The master's heart had been destroyed, the curse broken, the prison unmade. Yet when she looked up, she saw Damien standing at the edge of the ruins, and something inside her shattered anew. He was fading, not bleeding, not dying, fading, as if the garden's collapse was pulling him apart piece by piece. "No," she gasped, struggling to her feet, stumbling toward him. "You said if we broke the chain." He caught her as she fell into his arms, holding her so tightly it hurt. "I lied," he said, his voice thick with grief. "Or maybe, I hoped, I didn't know." She pressed her hands to his chest, feeling the flickering heartbeat growing fainter, more distant. "Take it back," she begged. "Take my life. Take my soul. I don't care. Just stay." Damien smiled, and there were tears in his eyes, real tears, after centuries of none. "You already gave me everything, Isabel," he whispered. And for the first time, it was real. It was enough. He pressed his forehead to hers, trembling. "You saved me," he said. "You loved me, even when I was unworthy." her nails dug into his arms. "I still love you," she sobbed. "Stay with me, please." Damien kissed her then fiercely, desperately, tasting of ash and sorrow and all the nights they would never have. And for a moment, there was no garden, no curse, no death, only them, only love. But when she opened her eyes, he was already slipping through her fingers. The last thing she felt was his hand brushing her cheek, tender as a prayer. "Live," he whispered. And he was gone. Isabel screamed. The sound ripped through the dying world, a raw, unbearable sound that cracked the sky and shook the burning thorns. But the world did not heal. The garden did not rise. There was only silence, only night, and her, standing alone in the ruins. They found her days later, a girl in a tattered nightgown, standing barefoot among the ruins of a forgotten cathedral, her hair tangled with ash and roses. She did not speak. She did not weep. The doctors said she was mad. The priests said she was cursed. But Isabel knew the truth. She had loved a monster, and he had loved her back. And in the end, love had not saved them. Only the memory remained. A memory sharp as thorns, sweet as blood. And in her dreams, when the world was dark and the stars were silent, she could still feel Damien's kiss burning against her soul. Forever,